Hi, this is John Cullen. Welcome to another episode of Hypothetically Speaking. In the past, people have accused me somewhat of being mysterious in some of my presentations and maybe beating around the bush a little bit and not being explicit about what my thoughts are on a given case or cover-up. And I wanted to do this podcast. I wanted to put together some materials to talk about the Charlie Kirk shooting and to address what the evidence appears to be indicating. So I don't want to leave it up for interpretation or whatever. I want to just sort of connect the dots as best I can and then let you guys figure out, what do you think is going on here? And, what do you think was the motive behind this? So let's begin with a quote that I was reminded of by Dr. Dave Cullen from Cornell. And when Dave and I got together to talk about, I forget if it was the Vegas shooting or the COVID outbreak or whatever, and we're talking about different aspects of cover-up stuff, Dave reminded me of this Aristotle quote. Aristotle said, "It is the mark of an educated man to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." And Dave either said it verbatim or paraphrased it as we were talking about one of the cover-ups. And it's an important thing. In other words, having an adult conversation about these things is what adults do. Right? When we're not playing pinochle or bowling, we talk about stuff like the Charlie Kirk killing. And what do we think happened? So having these conversations, particularly here on Hypothetically Speaking, where we're just talking about ideas, again, this is sort of what adults do, is we discuss ideas. I think that's kind of the background of democracy and all that. So the purpose of this podcast is going to be to address, why does it appear that Charlie Kirk was assassinated? Right now, what does the evidence appear to indicate? To me. All right, so that's what we're going to step through. But at the same time, this past week has been kind of crazy and kind of busy. One of the big questions that a lot of people are bringing up or talking about has to do with the killing of Charlie Kirk and the war in Iran. And is there any connection between the two? And we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. So is there some sort of connection between Charlie Kirk getting killed and the war in Iran, as opposed to Charlie Kirk getting killed and transsexual furries? It's almost the same thing, but we're going to get into this aspect instead. But over the course of the last week, quite a bit has happened in the United States as far as semi-tangential news, in this realm. So we had this guy, Nasir Best, attempted a breach of the White House, fired 3 shots, and then Secret Service fired, I think, 27 more shots, hit an innocent bystander, which shouldn't surprise us after we saw what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, when the security team fired, I guess it was 5 shots and didn't hit anybody, which was also kind of a miracle given that their own people were downrange and he could have hit 5 of his people with his 5 shots. So that was kind of miraculous and unimpressive. And here Nasir Best got a couple shots off, and then they unloaded on him, killed him on the scene. So he was killed by Secret Service on May 23rd. So this happened just a couple days ago, right outside the White House. So another apparent assassination attempt. Had this guy gotten in somehow and hopped the fence and started shooting, it would not have been good. So if we were to take inventory here, we've got a couple names. There's actually more than these that I don't want to get into, but just as far as, attempted assassinations or, attacks, We've got this Nasir Best guy at the White House. He was killed at the scene. We have this guy, Cole Allen, the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooter, the guy who unloaded a shotgun at one of the security guards, and then they fired at him but missed, but took him into custody. So he's in custody right now. Ryan Routh was the golf course attempted assassin guy, supposedly. They found him 40 miles away. He was arrested, tried, and found guilty, and he's in jail. Thomas Crooks apparently was the guy on the roof in Butler, Pennsylvania, apparently. And he was shot in the mouth, killed at the scene. And then there's this guy, Asif Merchant. And it turns out that he's a Pakistani guy that was working for Iran. And he was convicted just about 10 weeks ago. March 6th, he was convicted. So, and he was kind of lining up assassins in the United States, I guess, acting like an agent or something like that. So he was just convicted. So there's a lot going on. And I think Joe Kent talked about this when he was talking with Tucker and said, you know, at some point, you know, he starts worrying about his family. And we're going to talk about that in a second here as well. So this is the Asif Merchant story, Iranian intelligence agent convicted of terrorism and murder for hire in connection with foiled plot to assassinate U.S. politicians and government officials. This is the guy that the FBI named as a confidential informant, confidential human source or something, CHS or whatever their initials are. And that was that made it such that the other agencies couldn't get their hands on him and couldn't interview him. And then we found out just a couple days ago that Ivanka Trump was targeted for assassination by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, terrorist, in a plot to avenge that the president killed Qasem Soleimani. So exactly what Joe Kent said in his interview with Tucker Carlson, that the president was afraid they might come for his family. Here you go. So Ivanka Trump in the crosshairs, and you know she's not happy about that. And the other day, it appears that Tulsi Gabbard has stepped out of the ring. She has resigned, which after the resignation of Joe Kent, I can't say was a big surprise. My first introduction to Joe was when he was Tulsi Gabbard's chief of staff. So when I was speaking to him the first time, I imagine it was, to get information back to Tulsi. So it looks like she's out. And it's interesting because you guys know I've been a big Tulsi supporter for years. I've done a number of videos about stuff that she has said. One of the reasons is that she's been sort of a big proponent of letting the victims from September 11th pursue whatever they need to pursue as it pertains to Saudi Arabia. And we know from the 28 pages that's heavily redacted that a lot of the characters are from Saudi Arabia, having to do with September 11th and not having to do with Osama bin Laden. And so it looks like, you know, Osama bin Laden was almost like the Stephen Paddock of September 11th. Like, he had nothing to do with it. He was thrilled, but he had nothing to do with it. And these other folks did. And she has been a proponent of releasing the information and letting the victims pursue, recompensation or, recompensance or, whatever the terms are for that. So I've made a couple videos about Tulsi, talked about some of the stuff. She also got involved when the war started with Ukraine, and she was talking about the biolabs. And, I was working on that and documenting that. I went to the U.S. Embassy website, got the documents and all that. And either she saw my reporting or was just, on the same page. And she was saying, yeah, we got a bunch of biolabs there. It's no wonder that Russia wanted to cross the border. So, again, I've been a big supporter of hers. The fact that she left the Democratic Party after they treated her pretty poorly. They wouldn't let her on the debate stage when she was running for president. And then she joins the other team and now realizes the grass isn't greener on the other side. And so now she's almost, in an independent situation, and we'll see what happens there. So that should be interesting as the weeks go by. We'll see what happens. All right, so the bottom line up front, why was Charlie Kirk assassinated? A lot of people, Israel. It's like Israel is the cause of all the evil. And I think the statistic I saw is that there's only 15 million or 16 million Jews in the world. And like 9 million of them live in Israel. And probably the lion's share of the rest of them live in the United States, or I guess there's Ethiopian Jews, which is another, strange twist. But there's not that many Jews. And Israel's got like 9 million of them, and I guess it's a little bit bigger than New Jersey or whatever. And I don't really hear anybody explaining Israel what? Like, Charlie Kirk would be killed for Israel. Like, what the hell's the relationship there? Like, what? I don't listen to a whole lot of the other podcasts and stuff, and I don't get into the personalities. I'm sure there's other people who do. But I don't hear a whole lot of explanation. Like, why? So we would kill Charlie Kirk for Israel. Why? Do we need oranges? Do we need matzah? I mean, what is it that we need from Israel that would be in jeopardy because of Charlie Kirk? No, right? So I hear Tucker talking about this. I hear Candace Owen talking about Israel. And yet I don't hear them really offering up a cogent explanation as to why. In other words, if it was about oranges, or it was about, other products coming out of Israel that America needs, maybe, but I don't know of any of those. So given that they keep bringing it up but don't offer an answer, I asked ChatGPT for an over-the-top caricature of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, each looking ridiculously confused. That's all I said, and here's what it gave me. All right, so that's Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens looking ridiculously confused, but somehow it decided to make Tucker look kind of dandy with the frills and the shirt and the tie and the puffy hair, and I don't know. So I didn't ask for that. So all I said was over-the-top caricature of Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, each looking ridiculously confused, and this is what we got from ChatGPT. But the net of it is they're not really offering up, I think, a cogent explanation. And that's what I'm going to attempt to do here in this show. So first of all, what does Israel export to the United States? Anyone? What is the number one technology export from Israel? They break it down into three big categories, like computer systems and technology, and like defense stuff is one category. Another category is like diamonds and like gem-related stuff, maybe for medical. And then the other category, what the hell is the other category? Optical stuff. And so the number one exporter in the first category was a company called Mobileye. And Mobileye makes, I think, the cameras and the processing system where your car, if it has that self-driving stuff, doesn't run over people. Or if your car stays in the lane without you using your hands. This is that technology. So Mobileye is the number one technology export from Israel to the United States. And it's the, if your car's got some sort of camera in the front, that's what this stuff is. Not that all cameras in the front are Mobileye, but that's what Mobileye does, and that's the number one export to the USA. But the number two export to the USA is a company called Elbit Systems. And Elbit Systems is the third largest military contractor in Israel. But it's the second largest exporter to the United States in Israel. So the largest and the second largest military contractors in Israel don't export more stuff to the USA than Elbit. Elbit sells the USA more stuff. Well, why is that interesting? Because Elbit makes something that matters to us. And what is that? Let's take a look. It's called the Lanius, the Elbit Lanius. The Elbit Lanius is a UAV, a drone, that's rather small, but it has the ability to kill people. So that's nice. And the United States spent, I think, about $6 billion with this company, Elbit Systems, in 2024. So we spent $6 billion with Elbit, the makers of the Lanius, in 2024. Now, I don't know how many of these things we bought, but let's take a look at this video together. Let's watch this so that you guys know what I'm talking about. This is the Elbit Lanius, and the opening scene shows a big drone, kind of like a DJI 1000 or 800, the big ones, with 4 Elbit Laniuses riding on top. So it's a big octocopter with 4 Elbit Laniuses along for the ride. Let's watch this video together.
Elbit Systems presents Lanius Search and Attack in 1. New, innovative, autonomous, lethal solution based on racing drones. The Lanius conducts GPS navigation, flight, scanning, mapping enemy detection, and lethality in a complex urban environment. Is equipped with AI technologies that allows navigation to building, scanning the building to identify openings, scanning and mapping, object avoidance, enemy detection and classification, target incrimination by human, and lethality. The system indemnifies blocked openings and can perform ad hoc lethal ambush. Increasing lethality and combat tempo while maximizing human survivability. Lanius, search and attack in 1.
So it's like a floor wax and a dessert topping. Search and attack in 1. Great. So we can search, find, and kill. So that's the Elbit Lanius, and we spent $6 billion with these guys in 2024. Let's go to this next clip. This is the Adam Bartholomew footage from that day. We're not going to be watching Charlie Kirk get shot, but as Adam Bartholomew is filming, he picks up some UAVs in his footage. So let's take a look at the Adam Bartholomew footage, and some of you may not have seen this. All right, so from the moment of the shot, it's 53 seconds later, we see something kind of crazy.
There's been a shooting. We heard shots. You guys okay? Okay, love you. Be safe. Okay, be safe. Bye.
It's coming up.
Apparently there's been a shooting. I don't know who's been shot.
Right there. It happens so fast, it's in an instant. You can't see it.
We are here live at Utah Valley State University. There's been a shooting at the Charlie Kirk event, the TPUSA event.
So the net of it is that in this Adam Bartholomew footage, we see UAVs. And so the shot was fired 53 seconds ago. And then in the footage, we see this thing that appears to be attempting to escape. And the thing that we see, takes off, and it's only in 3 frames. So 3 frames if they were recording at 24 frames per second, or 30 frames per second, or 60 frames per second, will determine how much time this was. I didn't look at the EXIF data from this to figure out how many frames per second he's doing. But if it's only 3 frames, it's 3 of 24 or 3 of 30 in a second. So it's either 3/30ths of a second, 1/10, or 3/24ths of a second, 1/8. So it's either an eighth of a second or a tenth of a second. It's gone. Okay, so look closely. Watch what happens. 1, 2, 3. All right, right there. And it's not there in other photos. So if you go to a different photo, that thing is not there. Okay, so that's the first one. 1. And then the next spot is very difficult to see. It's in the trees. And whereas in this shot, because it's silhouetted against a white background, it looks dark. But in the next shot, it's against the trees. And so now it's not silhouetted so much. It's up against a green background. And here's where you see it, is right there. And again, if you look in the center of that red circle, there's nothing there in the other shots. So if I go to the next photo, there's nothing there. Okay, so if I go there, nothing there, and then it's gone. So it appears there, and then it's gone. And then in this next shot, it's kind of easy to see up here. So it goes, let's go through the sequence one more time. It goes from down here by the concrete thing, almost like it was in that ambush mode, like it was sitting down there, had a view to Charlie Kirk, took the shot, waits 50 seconds, they power it up, and then they hit, the getaway button. Because in a matter of a fraction of a second, it goes bing, bang, bang, and it's gone. And if you look at the people, look down below at the people. Look how far the people run. By the time this thing's, it's like half a step. And this is the zoom in on this shot, is this. So this is zooming in. So this is not a bird. All right? It's not a bird. Now here's another one. Could be the same unit, but it's obviously not at the same moment. Could be a different unit. And this one's over by the balcony area. And we have some footage from the balcony area that picked up another drone. And let's take a look at that footage. So this footage picked up another drone. I didn't find this. You guys know who did. I'll put it in the comments. Hats off once again. But let's take a look at this footage and see if you guys can see the UAVs.
See where that came from? Is that here, wasn't it?
Okay, so kind of tough to see. Right there. That's 1. 2. Meaning it's same one, but it's flying. It's flying left to right. 2. 3. Frames. So these are frames that we're seeing it. 1, 2, 3 frames. So that's either 1/8 of a second, 1/10 of a second, right? Again, down and out. All right. So we've got these UAVs on different cameras from different viewpoints. Different people are picking them up. We're seeing them throughout the venue. They're there. 29 days after Charlie Kirk is shot, we get the Gaza peace deal. it would be far less suspicious if this had been 32 days later, 35 days later, 38 days later. The fact that it's less than 30 days is almost as if the 30-day was a deadline. And so we get a Nobel Peace Prize discussion and a Gaza peace deal. President is signing it, says, nobody's been able to do this in 3,000 years. 29 days after Charlie Kirk is shot. Well, Tucker Carlson had a big conversation with Joe Kent, and Tucker Carlson has this conversation with John Kiriakou. John is former CIA, and I guess got in trouble for something apparently. But in this conversation, I think you're going to understand the sentiment behind the caricature that we looked at earlier, which is, what is going on? Oh my. So let's take a look at this video clip. This is Tucker Carlson and John Kiriakou. Let's listen to what these guys had to say.
2 or 3 weeks after this war began, the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, Joe Kent, resigned. In his resignation letter, he said, I believe, he didn't say this in his letter, he said it in an interview with me shortly after the next day. He said, I believe the Butler assassination attempt, the other assassination attempt in Florida, a couple of breaches of Donald Trump's personal security Secret Service detail, and Charlie Kirk's murder may all have played a role in convincing the president to go to war with Iran. What do you think that means?
I would not be at all surprised. You know what? Let me preface this by saying I don't have any inside information.
I don't either.
But I would not be surprised if a person or multiple people got into the president's ear and said, this isn't a coincidence that there were these 3 events. There were these 3 events because the Iranians are behind it. They've got these cells. They're around the United States. We can't identify them. We can't catch them. But they're...
All right, hold on, John. The Iranians are behind it? How are the Iranians behind the killing of Charlie Kirk if we've got the Pentagon's Hades plane? Did they hijack the Hades plane? Did they abscond with it in the middle of the evening when nobody was looking? What kind of nonsense is this, Kiriakou? What the hell are you talking about? There's UAVs flying around. There's a Pentagon Hades spy plane flying around. And you think somebody told the president that Iran did that? No, Iran may have been behind the Butler thing. We know we have multiple shooters in Butler. And that whole thing was covered up. But to lump these 2 things together, how would you do that for? Does John Kiriakou not know about the UAVs? Does he not know about N1098L? The Hades spy plane, the Pentagon spy plane? What the hell is he talking about? Iran was behind that? At Utah Valley University. Okay.
gunning for you. And Charlie Kirk was, a practice hit, or Charlie Kirk was a message or whatever. And I wouldn't be surprised if the president would believe something like that. If people he trusts are telling him there's a problem and the problem originates in Iran, whether it's true or not, that he would respond to that.
A lot of people did tell him that. That's a fact. I can confirm it. People told him Iran is out to kill you. The Butler assassination attempt, Iran was behind it. People were saying that fact.
Mm-hmm.
But where that theory falls down is with the Charlie Kirk assassination. So if you were trying to claim that the Iranians were behind it and there were leads from the National Counterterrorism Center or the ODNI that suggested foreign involvement, who knows if they go anywhere, you would follow up on those leads.
You would have to follow up on those leads.
But they shut them down.
Yes.
And that's a fact. And
So we're talking about Joe Kent again.
it doesn't make you a reckless conspiracy theorist
No.
or evil to ask, what is that? Why wouldn't you follow up on those leads?
I'm one of these people that believes that in almost all cases, the simplest explanation is
I think
probably
that's right.
the correct one. But when word came out, thanks to Joe Kent and his brave actions and revelations, that he was not permitted to follow up on these leads. Well, call me a conspiracy theorist, but that's the only place I can go.
Well, what's the answer?
There had to be some sort of a...
What's the other answer? I mean, I want to find another answer. I don't want to have any thoughts like this. Charlie, of course, was a good friend of mine.
He was a good friend of yours.
But even if he wasn't, I live in this country. But what?
Yeah.
Are there any good answers to that question?
No. There's literally no reason why you wouldn't follow up on a lead.
Why would the president shut down the investigation into Butler, into his own attempted assassination?
I can't even fathom a reason, especially because this president has taken such a strong stand against the deep state, right? We all agreed that there's a deep state. You don't have to call it that. You can call it the federal bureaucracy or whatever you want to call it.
Permanent Washington.
Permanent
the
Washington.
People who are going to be here when you leave.
Exactly right. So somebody like the president who has taken such a strong stance against that deep state, you would think would be the first person to want to run these allegations to ground.
Of course, but also just out of self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Why would the president keep the leadership of the Secret Service in place after his own personal security was breached repeatedly? That's a fact. These are, none of this is speculation. That's all true. Why? What explains that?
I worked with a guy in Athens. He was a contractor. He had been a long time Secret Service agent and was the creator, the founder.
All right, so he's going to tell a story about how a guy screwed up and got fired. So, and that's a good thing. And I agree. But the two of them are carrying on with this, pearl clutching thing. Oh my. Whatever could it be? Why would they not want to investigate this? Why would they not want to look into that? Well, the Butler thing and the Charlie Kirk thing are different things, right? So Butler was one thing. He was not yet president. We have evidence of multiple shooters. We have congressional testimony recommending that the committee look into that evidence of multiple shooters, and they didn't do that. And we now know from Joe Kent that the investigative, inspector general was just completely shut down. So it appears the president didn't want widespread awareness of what happened in Butler. He wanted to keep that close to the vest. Now, if it turns out that those were Asif Merchant connected assassins, and that's why they made him a confidential human source, is because they didn't want any of that getting out, and that the kid on the roof was not Thomas Crooks. It was somebody that Asif Merchant hired, and Thomas Crooks maybe died on the Parkway that night at midnight and was at the morgue. So they had a body named Thomas Crooks, but the guy on the roof is not that. I don't know. I don't know how these guys get away with this stuff. But what I do know is that multiple shots were taken in Butler. That's not a theory. That's ballistic evidence. So the two of them carrying on about, well, why would you not want to look into it, is kind of humorous. Let's continue.
That's so weird, because normally there's like a one-to-one between someone's obvious interest and his actions. It's like, that's a threat to me, I'm not putting up with it. But here you have a case where it's a clear threat to him, but he's absolutely putting up with it. You're ascribing that to weakness, like he's just weak, just like he's got too much else to deal with.
I just can't imagine, and I don't think he's a weak man. I think he's proven time and time again that he's not.
So then, what are we looking at?
But we're missing something here. Yeah, there's something deeper in the system that's not permitting him to go forward, or that's not permitting the government, the rest of the government, to conduct an appropriate investigation. What are historians going to say about this 20, 30, 50 years from now? What are PhD
They're going to
candidates?
say, at very least, there's a mystery at the center of it, at the center of global events. And now that we've embarked on this war against the council of the entire U.S. government. Like you just said, there's no one in the U.S. government who is for this that we know of anyway. And he does it anyway in the wake of those acts of violence. Joe Kent says there's a connection.
He's not really a friend so much. He's a friendly acquaintance who spent 30 plus years at MI6, the British Foreign Intelligence Service. I spoke with him recently and he said, you Americans, you're a mystery to us now. We thought we knew you until 9/11. And then you went out and just started killing everybody. And we thought, well, the Americans were traumatized. This is going to run its course. And then it seemed to run its course. And then you invade Iran and you don't consult with us. You don't ask for our help. And then you blame us when things start turning against you. Like, why aren't the British helping us? Well, you haven't asked for any help. And you didn't tell us what you were going to do in advance. And he said, what are we supposed to think? The only conclusion that we can draw is that you're not really the great friends that we thought you were.
We hate them. So my read on it, having watched this all pretty carefully over a long time, is that we have just taken Israeli priorities and made them our own. And Israeli priorities would include destabilizing Iran, turning it into a chaotic mess, civil war, and destroying Europe. The Israelis hate Europe.
Yeah, and the Israelis thrive on chaos.
Right.
Chaos in Iraq was good for Israel. Chaos in Iran is good for Israel. Chaos in Libya, in Syria is good for Israel. Yeah. It's not good for us, but it's good for them.
So that's what I'm talking about. Chaos. I mean, that's not really a great explanation that that's why we would do this. It's like, it doesn't add up. So let me see if I can explain it. Couple things happened during the Gaza peace deal that make it jump off the page at me a little bit. So first of all, I wanted to know how many hostages were there that were still alive when we did the deal, that we got released, and what was the price that we had to pay. And so it turns out there were 20 living hostages that were still in captivity by Hamas, and Israel freed between 1,700 and 1,900 Palestinian prisoners for 20 hostages. That is some ratio there. So Netanyahu agrees to free, call it 1,800 prisoners in exchange for 20 hostages in order to get this deal done. All right, so just keep that in mind. The other thing that happened that's part of the deal is that the Palestinian Liberation Organization is going to be allowed to reopen. The PLO. This is Yasser Arafat's operation. So that's part of the deal. It's like, did anybody read this? It's like, how the hell did they get Netanyahu to agree to have the office of the General Delegation of the Palestinian Liberation Organization reopen and give up and turn loose 1,800 prisoners? These are some pretty mega gives here for Mr. Netanyahu. This is something from Dr. Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a doctor, an ophthalmologist, in fact. And he said it's of the highest importance in the art of detection to be able to recognize out of a number of facts which are incidental and which are vital. And this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I see, during the Charlie Kirk thing, everybody's looking at the shirt, and the shirt did this, and it bounced off his bulletproof vest, and then hit here, and then it was exploding microphones. And it's like, there's a $120 million Pentagon spy plane at the scene of the murder twice at 200 feet and 113 knots. And people are talking about his microphone. I have a DJI microphone. I think it costs $49. There's no exploding microphones, people. You need to be able to discern. And this seems to be something that people struggle with. There's also something where people stick to their beliefs despite new evidence. And that's kind of strange too. All right, this is the exploding pager footage. This is what it looks like when something explodes that's on your body. All right, so this, it's not really that upsetting, but let's watch it together. All right, so a couple things here. There's a puff of smoke, right? It's an incendiary event. Clothing becomes tattered and torn and charred from the event. So that's what it looks like. One more time. So there's a puff of smoke, charred clothing. All right, so that's what happens, and that's not what happened with Charlie Kirk. So you guys need to drop it and move on, especially when this is 200 feet above the lake, going 113 miles an hour, 113 knots. The Hades program has the ability to launch and recover UAVs while flying. And we see UAVs at the scene. You guys, right? It's like, connect the dots here. This is more important than the microphone. And if you don't understand that, stop watching my stuff. You don't belong here. You need to be able to discern what is more meaningful. A Pentagon spy plane at the scene of the crime twice at 200 feet. It descended from 40,000 feet to 200 feet. Twice. And we see UAVs all over the place. Learn to discern. Right? It is of the utmost importance to be able to recognize out of a whole bunch of different facts which are incidental and which are vital. And I don't see people being able to do that, and that's kind of worrying to me. All right, we got UAVs all over the place here. All right, so what this presents is a very uncomfortable double bind. The double bind is either A, the president and Pete Hegseth had no idea that the Pentagon's Hades plane was at the scene of the crime twice that day and knew nothing about the UAVs that were deployed. Or the president, Pete Hegseth, or Ratcliffe, the CIA, had approved it and ordered the mission to proceed. It's got to be one or the other. There is no third choice. Either he knew it or he didn't know. Now, if he doesn't know that this thing is doing this and it's there, who's behind that? And why would they want to kill Charlie Kirk and keep it secret from the president? Why would they want to do that? It's kind of weird. All right, back to Israel. Get this Gaza peace deal. I'm going to have to do a separate session on all of this Palestinian territory here and these enclaves of Israeli settlements. And this isn't going to work out well. I'll do a separate session on it, but this is a mess waiting to happen. We'll get to that in another time. The question is, we get this Gaza peace deal 29 days after Charlie's killed, and then we go to war with Iran. Is there any connection here? What the hell, how would a war with Iran? Well, Charlie didn't want us to go to war with Iran. All right, so Charlie's dead, so we go to war with Iran. But how How's that connected? Well, let's go back to what Jared said. Listen to what Jared said.
So demilitarization, this is something we're starting now that we have a new government in Gaza. This government will be working with Hamas on the demilitarization to really take the principles that were agreed to in the document to the next phase. And hopefully that will be successful. Without that, we can't rebuild. So if Hamas does...
Without that, we can't rebuild. I know everybody's all excited, build another city. But if Hamas doesn't honor the deal, well, that's going to ruin everything. Can't have that.
Not demilitarize, that will be what holds back Gaza and the people of Gaza from achieving their aspiration, and that's very important. So the next 100 days, we're going to continue to just be heads down and focused on making sure this is implemented. We continue to be focused on humanitarian aid, humanitarian shelter, but then creating the conditions to move forward. So thank you. Final point I'll just make is this is really only possible because of the work of so many people and President Trump's great leadership. But a lot of you have been asking, how can we help? So the countries have all been incredibly generous. We'll be doing the first conference where we'll announce a lot of the contributions that will be made in a couple weeks in Washington. From the private sector, there'll be amazing investment opportunities. I know it's a little risky to be investing in a place like this, but we need you to come, take faith, invest in the people, try to be a part of it. And then finally, I'll just talk to people on the media and on the social media, which is, this deal only happened because we worked with Israel, we worked with Turkey, we worked with Qatar, we worked with Saudi, we worked with Egypt. I mean, everyone worked together. We worked with UAE. We all worked together to make this happen. I see a lot of people trying to escalate, criticizing Israel or Israelis criticizing Turkey.
All right, so who's the black sheep of the family? Who's not there? Who does not have a seat at the table? Iran. And if the vision is for this new Gaza, right? If this is what, we're after is new Gaza. Move this up here. It's like amazing. But if Hamas doesn't do what Hamas said they're going to do, we're not going to get to do this. And everybody who's teed up here is going to be really disappointed if Hamas ruins this. It's like, this is why we can't have nice things. The Gaza peace deal is announced 29 days after Charlie's killed. Netanyahu gives up 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, almost 1,900, 1,800. New Gaza isn't going to get built if Iran continues to exist, funding Hamas and Hezbollah unchecked. And so it appears to me that the war with Iran isn't really about nuclear weapons and uranium and that. I mean, we'll take it if we can get it. It's about New Gaza. New Gaza can't exist with the old Iranian leadership funding Hamas, funding Hezbollah. And the Abraham Accords brought all these countries to the table. And next thing you know, Iran is bombing Dubai, UAE. Iran is bombing Qatar. And they're all sitting there with Jared, and Jared's going, told you. So they crossed the line. And now all these countries, they're all excited about New Gaza. Everybody wants to make billions of dollars building this stuff. But how are we going to do that if Hamas is running around with AK-47s every time, we try and build something, they shoot it up. So how do you absolutely positively get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah? You knock Iran back to the Stone Age. And now, Hamas and Hezbollah are, the least of their worries. What was the biggest obstacle to getting new investments for the construction and development for New Gaza? Hamas. Right? So, how do you eliminate Hamas so you can proceed with the project and raise hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars? you destroy Iran. Who had the most potential to cause an uprising amongst college-age voters against the war? Who was potentially a major sociological obstacle against destroying Iran? Did Charlie Kirk get involved in something that was above his pay grade? I remember reading about like Bill Ackman and big money guys were trying to get Charlie to swing his something. Something he was doing was getting a lot of attention having to do with Israel. And it sounds like he alienated somebody. And, who stood the most to lose if nothing happens with Iran and Hamas continues to torture everybody, and they, every construction project in this area, Hamas is in there, skimming off the top, torturing people, all that. Who close to Trump stands the most to lose if the project doesn't go forward? Jared and Ivanka. So the public spin is we can't allow these lunatics to have a nuclear weapon, right? That's the public spin. Sounds good, right? President said to Tucker, "You want them to have a nuclear weapon?" Tucker said, "No, I don't want anybody to have a nuclear weapon." Okay, well then we got to go to war. My hypothesis is, in order to rid the Middle East of Hamas and Hezbollah so that New Gaza could proceed, the USA attacked the head of the snake, Iran, destroy Iran's leadership. Hamas and Hezbollah have no money, and then and only then can New Gaza proceed. And so that's the connection. It appears that maybe Netanyahu has skin in the game here. He wants this to proceed. And Charlie Kirk was in the way. There could be a lot more to the Charlie Kirk angle. Again, killing him seems a bit dramatic. Knowing what we know with this evidence, it's certainly, I'm sure, sent a message to anybody who's following this. So in other words, the guys in Cuba, if you see what happened here, it means we can kill you and nobody's going to know what happened. In fact, it's making me wonder about the Shinzo Abe assassination. Was that really the guy with the made-up gun, the homemade gun? Or was that another one of these kinds of things? I don't know. But we have this ability, fly in, kill somebody, fly out, nobody knows what happened. It's an incredible, scary capability. Makes you wonder who's the terrorists. Hypothetically speaking. I'm John Cullen. Thanks for joining.